let's get into it. My name is Ben Wheat, as you were just told. I am a software developer at BlockFi. We do cryptocurrency and banking and Elixir, and it's lots of fun. I can be found at these handles for these sites. If you want to reach out, feel free. You can definitely get me at on Twitter. I have a sick addiction. I assume like most of the rest of us have as well. Before we get into too much, I want to first thank a few people. One, I want to thank BlockFi for the time to both work on my project, my work on some of the stuff, the time to speak. Wanted to thank Sean Cribbs for the mentorship, all of the encouraging words, the great thoughts and encouragement. And most importantly, I need to thank my wife for all of the time. She has just accepted my my thoughts on all of this. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So I was reflecting on the name of this talk recently, and by recently I mean this morning. I was reflecting on what the title was communicating to everyone, what this should look like, very specifically, is that I'm a web developer. So I know that CSS handles a lot of things for me in templating, in general websites, right? It makes it pretty. So that was my go-to solution for this problem that I ran into. So that's where it comes here. But if you're like, I don't want to hear about CSS, one, you're probably not listening to the talk, understandably. Two, we're just deriving some ideas from good parts of CSS. So here's the problem. It's not a problem. Let's introduce Scenic. A real quick background on Scenic. It is a UI framework written by Boyd Malter. It uses OpenGL and the Beam, so it has all of the C code sitting somewhere, and then Elixir sitting on top of all of it. So it lets us do fun things like drawing circles, which if you saw a previous this talk previously, the circle didn't go away. I fixed that problem. It also allows you to do things like put some text, and it's as simple as, since these things are macros, it's as simple as just declaring them in a pipe and giving a few stylistic choices on them. So I played around with this. It was really cool, really exciting. Here's where I started to run into, not issues, I wouldn't say. I ran into difficulties. Let's say, for example, you are trying to get some resources from the internet, from a database, from wherever, and you want to, like a normal developer would choose to, you want to iterate over some of these, this list of resources, and you want to display them somewhere on the page, right? Scenic expects a translate to put things on page to the exact X and Y coordinates of specific of the specific components or primitives that you're putting on the page. This makes sense. It's a graphing library, X and Y's, Z's, that makes sense. As a web developer, it doesn't make sense to me, and it's not comfortable. So I began to work on some of these things and was like, okay, well, I want to put some buttons, so I'm gonna start putting them, and then I'm gonna, they're gonna be a little off, and I had to do math to figure this out. And these values are all hard-coded, and I don't like hard-coded values. So I needed to find a programmatic way to make not hard-coded values. Scenic is initially built for static screen sizes, so really for like embedded apps. So when you're building that way, it usually makes sense that you would have some static sizes because your screen size isn't going to change much. While I tinker with some of the embedded work, I find myself just playing with it on my computer, with Scenic specifically, on my Mac. And I keep thinking, well, it would be cool to have things a desktop app. It'd be cool to just not worry about embedded and just to build things in this viewport. So that means screen sizes change. When screen sizes change, I would do it, but that's a feature yet to be implemented. If, say, we increase the screen size, maybe we'll be okay. But if we make the screen size smaller, we're definitely going to find some problems. Some things are just going to get cut off, and the layout's just going to be all wrecked, right? So how CSS works and all that. So when I was thinking about this problem, I went straight to CSS to figure out how I could begin to programmatically put things on the page. So the journey was long, very, very, very long. But what I arrived at was that I needed some grids. So when I looked at things, I thought, okay, well, I may want to place things in a header, but it's not the web. So it's kind of a header though. So I'll just make a grid and it's going to be in the header. What I have here is two sections of what I'm calling a header. Specifically in the code, the only thing that's identifying this as a header is an ID. Why I did that, I specifically implemented the Layout-O-Matic to take IDs, is that I wanted it to be as semantic as possible, because I want to be able to refer to it in the future, and I want to be able to just know what grid I'm talking about. So this grid is named header. It has a group, and the group has a rectangle inside. I did it this way because groups allow us to group things, but it's a nice way to think about almost a div, how we're putting things in a grid later on. The group gives us a translate. So so the header specifically is translating from 0, 0. And then the rectangle is created because I wanted to have two equal portions of the header. So that gives us the maximum size. Great, so I got a header. I can put some titles and things, that's nice. Next thing I want, again, as any good web developer does, I want a body where I can put lots and lots of ads and then just a little bit of space for content. So within this, I said, well, I want to place some things. Let's make the center a little bit smaller just so things line up well. So that's how we have, and these are percentages. So I said, well, I want something that's 75, or I did 45 or 60, 60, 20. I did something. The math works out, I promise. So I have now a header and a body. Great. That gets me some ideas of proportions when I'm thinking about this as as a web developer, but I'm still just missing some like very basics. So I want a simple grid. I just want a top, bottom, left, right, and the center point. I want to figure these things out so that later on I can know, well, this is the left part, and I want things to just start there. Great, we have a grid. So this didn't take as long as other parts of this as other parts of this this library and this journey took. But this was a really important part, because without this, you still need to say, well, library, I want you to place some things, because this was the ultimate goal for me, was to take some of those buttons and just take a list and just iterate over them and then put them somewhere from a starting point, and an ending point, a maximum point. So we have an idea of kind of the box, the grid that we want things to fit into. So I started with a grid. This talk was also given at previously. I kind of said, well, I'm going to build this stuff with Scenic and it's going to be last minute. And what I did this time was I took the time to really rework this and really think through it. So what I ended up getting, this is a very meta talk. The talk is about the slides of the talk. What I ended up getting was using the grids to get a better idea of where things go on the page. So I'm able to lay things out really simply. I'm able to just reference a point and say to the library, give me, like, I know that point because it was programmatically set previously. So place some things in reference to that point. So I got things based on that point. This is very exciting. I'm part of me wanted to say that's the whole talk is just me going back through my slides. This was a lot. This was a lot because layouts are difficult. So I have been working on another part, and I want to show you a couple things. One, I do want to show some changes. If you've previously looked at the library, the Layout-O-Matic, I've made some changes, and they're very good changes and very needed. So the changes that I made, when it was very confusing, admittedly, when it was very confusing when I would say to someone, when I would say, oh, just use the library. It's really simple. Just use it and use it and tell me if it's good. Well, it wasn't good. And it wasn't good because it wasn't very clear. I just said, give me a bunch of information and I'll do a lot of work. But you still had to give me a lot of information. It wasn't very clear. So what I've done here is, this is my initial grid in my home screen. This is the code that's running these slides. I build a grid, I add a group, and then I say, I want my header and I want it to be equal sizes. I want a grid of equal sizes. So I call grid equal. That should have been a lot clearer to me when I started this, but it wasn't. And now it's much better. The body likewise got percentages, and then the simple grid just gets simple grid. So as we were working through this, I was building my slides, very excited about it. Jim starts sending emails saying, hey, I have very specific sizes everyone needs to make. Can everyone do that? And I said, I can do that. I can make slides. I can fix this. So with one change, I was able to change the entire size. One, I was able to affect the size, the overall size of the slides, and then I was able to affect the. I was able to change the portions of the screen that's used by the slides. So everything in the all the slides just shifted over. So all of the elements, all the grids, everything just shifted around just because I was able to change the initial size for the initial grids. It was a huge, so some people had to rework, some people had to rethink, had to realign each one. I just made one change and everything changed. It's very exciting. So that is the new changes. There are some additions. This is not released on Hex yet. I need to get things in a little bit of a cleaner state. The next thing I wanted to show is something I'm calling the draw-o-matic because I am not original when it comes to naming. So I will show what we're looking at here. I have been wanting a digital whiteboard, and I said, well, I'll just do it myself because they're expensive or they're a lot, or I didn't want to buy an iPad, whatever the case is. So I said, I'll just build one. I'll just solve this problem myself. So I said, okay, I figured, this part out pretty quickly. It wasn't too bad. And I was pretty excited about it. And I thought, that's awesome. I'm building a desktop app, but I'm missing a few things. I'm missing I'm missing some features, right? The feature set isn't much. It just draws some lines and then it clears. It also saves, but that has nothing to do with layouts. So we'll skip that for a future talk. So the thing that I worked on that I was determined to figure out is this color picker. I thought, yeah, I want to be able to change colors. It'd be really cool to like prove a point that I can just do that and it can just like change the color and stuff. So I started working on this. This means that I'm creating a custom component. The difficulty with custom components in Scenic is not that they're hard to write, it's that the Layout-O-Matic knows how to lay out components and primitives that are in the core library. They're sized very particularly. I had to review code, the source code, to figure out exactly how things are sized, how things are figured out. When I use a custom component, none of that stuff is there. So I had to work through that problem. What I did know is that I wanted some circles. I know how to lay out circles. They were the first thing I figured out how to automatically lay out. So I thought I would just start there. So circles, so the thing about a custom component is that these have to take click events. So this is a lot like a radio button in radio groups. These are existing components. So the entire component is one thing, right? I say I want the whole component. I get some colors, a list of color atoms, and then I get a color picker. The one component is made up of a bunch of little components. Those little components are how you identify that a thing has been clicked, and then the thing has been clicked within a bigger component. So what I set out to do was, well, I have a point. Usually when I do an auto layout, I say I have a minimum and I have a maximum, and I want you to lay things out and reflow things based on it. It fills this X. So go back to the original Y and start filling things in. Well, that's not really what I want here. I don't really care. I don't expect things to be that big. And when they are, I'll probably hide them within a menu or something. So I said, well, I just want to give a point and just figure it out. So as of last night, I'm very proud to say I got this on the screen, and the classic, I said to my wife, look, I did it. And she said, what did you do? And I said, I did this. I put some colors. It took me a lot of work. And it's because this stuff is not easy, right? I have to hold on state each time. I have to, the grid becomes a new size, right? Because I can't start at the original point for the second circle. I have a new point to start from. And circles are based off of the center point. So I now have to do even more arithmetic to make sure things get separated. So on top of that, I was able to successfully get these things these are being laid out automatically. So from any point, they would just automatically lay out, and they are fully dynamic. The goal is that if the screen's bigger, we can increase how many colors there are. And if it's a lot smaller, we can just have a few of them. And it'd be easier to do that because it's all dynamically done, and it just won't fit on the page. So you just can't see it. So, and to prove that this thing works, blue, you can't really tell, but green you can. This app itself is a whole nother, is another talk, or the inspiration for another talk. But I did want to show really briefly kind of what we're looking at here, and the really big portion of this library and the work that I've been doing with Scenic recently. So this looks confusing. It's not. I'm just putting a color picker in a group, and I am just iterating over the colors, passed in those colors, and I say I want to create a color picker, which is the individual circles. I want you to create one of those per color. And I need a specific ID on it because I need to figure out later what's being clicked. And then here's the stroke. That's going to change later on, right? And then usually a radius is how it goes to the data of a circle. But here I needed to have it for layout. So I said, I'll just stick it in styles. So now it has a radius style. So after I've done that, I have a list of, I've now got a bunch of things into a graph. The Layout-O-Matic actually changes the translates of the components or the primitives passed into layout. It actually translates them and puts them back into the graph and then returns the graph to you. So I have the graph and I said, all right, primitive layout, auto layout, here's the point I want you to lay out from, and here's the colors. And the colors are what we use for the ID. So I say, here's the list of IDs I want you to lay out. Here's the point I want you to start from. Give me a graph that's done that. And that, my friends, is what we have, is a graph that it has some components that are automatically laid out. So that is mostly what I have, and I think I'm pretty much out of time. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you all attending. I don't actually know who all is here, but thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Ben. It was such an interesting talk. Actually, I think there is some questions.
Yeah, I just pulled that up. So the first question, did you take some inspiration from CSS Grid? Yes, entirely. I actually asked some friends that are really good front-end engineers, and I asked for their thoughts on it, and they said it's really great. Everyone likes, like, it's the part of CSS everyone really likes. So I took a lot of inspiration from it. I am something that I'm hoping in the future. I've had a lot of people say, well, Android has a solution and iOS has a solution. And what I'd like to do is have some wrappers around the main library, where if you're more comfortable coming from iOS development or Android development, that we can get you an API that just wraps the existing Layout-O-Matic API so that you can use something more familiar that makes a little more sense. Some of the concepts won't translate necessarily, and so we'll have to work through some of those problems. Setting the grid areas, looks like the atoms follow that type of pattern. Yeah.